The NFL is built on chaos, but even by those standards, what just went down between the Green Bay Packers, the Cleveland Browns, and Shedeur Sanders feels like something out of a movie. One phone call, one trade push, and suddenly the entire future of two franchises was on the brink of collapse. At the center of it all, a rookie quarterback who hasn't even finished unpacking his bags in Cleveland, and yet already has ownership, sponsors, players, and fans treating him like the most valuable asset in the league. Let's rewind. The morning started like any other in Cleveland until a bombshell report dropped. The Green Bay Packers were making an aggressive push to pry Shedeur Sanders away from the Browns. This wasn't a casual inquiry. This wasn't a kick-the-tires kind of phone call. League insiders were saying Green Bay had a framework on the table, draft picks, star players, a package so wild it made even the most jaded executives stop and stare. The news hit social media first, and within minutes, chaos spread like wildfire through Cleveland's front office. Head coach Kevin Stefanski reportedly learned about it the same way fans did, by scrolling Twitter. Imagine finding out your supposed franchise quarterback was halfway out the door before you even finished your morning coffee. But here, where it gets even crazier, this wasn't just about football. Shedeur Sanders isn't just a quarterback. He's a brand, a business, a phenomenon. From jersey sales to TV ratings to sponsorship deals, he's already moving the needle in ways most rookies could only dream about. Trading him wouldn't just be a personnel move. It would be a financial earthquake, the kind of decision that could alienate fans, anger sponsors, and sink a franchise's credibility overnight. Cleveland ownership knew it. The players in the locker room knew it. And yet, the fact that the Packers were even in the conversation revealed something deeper. Cracks forming inside the Browns' own house. Think about the timing. The Browns' offense has looked like a relic, clinging to Joe Flacco as if it's still 2014. Meanwhile, their rookie with all the tools is stuck on the bench, forced to watch while the season slips away. Fans are furious. Players are whispering behind closed doors. And now, with Green Bay circling like sharks, the pressure on Cleveland's leadership has never been greater. The story isn't just Packers want Sanders. It's why they think they can get him. It's the sense that Cleveland, true to its history, might fumble the most important decision in modern franchise history. Because if Shedeur Sanders really is the future, and let's be honest, all signs point to that, then the Browns are one bad decision away from repeating decades of failure. This is bigger than a trade rumor. This is a test of power, of ego, and of whether the Browns can finally break their own curse. And as you'll see, the fallout from this one phone call didn't just spark a little drama, it ignited a full-blown war inside Cleveland. The bombshell didn't just break, it detonated. Early morning sports talk shows were still replaying highlights from last week's games when insiders dropped the story. The Green Bay Packers had contacted the Browns with a proposal centered on Shedeur Sanders. At first, it sounded like just another rumor floating through the NFL grapevine. But within minutes, multiple sources confirmed this wasn't smoke. This was fire. Fans scrolling through social media couldn't believe it. "No way the Browns are dumb enough to move Shedeur," one fan posted, while another warned, "If Cleveland trades him, I'm done with this team forever." Hashtags like Save Shedeur and Brown started trending within the hour. The reaction was instant, emotional, and ferocious. But while the internet erupted, the real drama was playing out behind closed doors. Reports claim the call from Green Bay didn't just catch the Browns off guard, it completely blindsided them. Some front office members allegedly didn't even know Shedeur's name had been floated in discussions until the news was already public. That kind of leak doesn't happen unless someone inside wanted it to. And when leaks start flying, it usually means one thing: dysfunction. Green Bay, on the other hand, played their cards with calculated precision. After losing their grip on the NFC spotlight, the Packers have been hunting for a face of the franchise to restore their glory. Who better than the son of Coach Prime, a quarterback who carries swagger, star power, and a fan base that stretches far beyond football? From Green Bay's perspective, it wasn't a gamble, it was an investment. And the fact that they thought Cleveland might even consider it said everything about how outsiders view the Browns' decision-making. Inside the locker room, whispers began to spread. Players who were promised Shedeur was the future suddenly questioned whether ownership truly believed it. One source close to the team claimed that veterans were shaken by the idea that management might trade away the one guy who represented hope for the franchise. And if you know anything about NFL locker rooms, you know trust is fragile. Once it cracks, it doesn't take long to break completely. So while the world debated whether the Packers had a real shot, one thing was clear. Cleveland's dirty laundry was now out in the open, and the storm was only beginning. Because if one phone call could create this much chaos, just wait until you see what happened when the locker room started to push back. When the dust started to settle from the initial shockwave, a bigger question began to surface. Why were the Packers so intent on Shedeur Sanders? To outsiders, it might have looked like a desperate move. But the truth is, Green Bay's pursuit wasn't some spur-of-the-moment gamble. It was a calculated strategy years in the making. The Packers, once synonymous with stability at quarterback, are in the middle of an identity crisis. For decades, they had Brett Favre and then Aaron Rodgers, two Hall of Fame-level icons who defined the franchise. But since Rodgers left, the team has struggled to recapture that same aura of dominance. Jordan Love has shown flashes, sure, but the organization knows better than anyone that in the NFL, flashes don't pay the bills. What Green Bay needs is a star, someone who can put the franchise back on the map and bring in not just wins, but headlines. That's where Shedeur Sanders comes in. Unlike most rookies, Shedeur isn't just a quarterback, he's a cultural force. He carries the legacy of Coach Prime, one of the most charismatic and polarizing figures in sports. He commands attention every time he takes the field, not just for his play, but for his presence. From endorsements to jersey sales, Shedeur represents something Green Bay hasn't had since Rodgers: marketability on a national and even global scale. According to insiders, the Packers' front office had been monitoring Shedeur long before the draft. They saw how he transformed Colorado's program, how he carried himself under immense scrutiny, and how he managed to balance being both a star athlete and a walking headline. When Cleveland grabbed him, Green Bay didn't panic, they waited. And when they saw signs of friction inside the Browns' organization, they pounced. It's been said the offer Green Bay prepared was one of the most aggressive in recent memory. We're talking high draft picks, proven starters, and even long-term financial flexibility. For a team like Cleveland, which has historically mismanaged quarterback talent, it might have been tempting. But Green Bay wasn't just offering assets. They were offering Cleveland a way out of its own dysfunction. The message was clear. If you're not fully committed to Shedeur, we are. What makes this even more fascinating is the way the Packers leaked just enough of their intentions to stir the pot. By letting the rumor mill churn, they applied pressure not just to Cleveland's front office, but also to Shedeur himself. After all, what does it do to a rookie's confidence when another franchise is publicly saying, "We'll build around you," while your own team is keeping you on the bench? Green Bay's pursuit wasn't just about filling a roster spot. It was about making a statement, about reclaiming their spot as a destination franchise, about proving to the league that they're still willing to take bold swings to win. And in targeting Shedeur Sanders, they weren't just chasing a quarterback, they were chasing a savior. But while Green Bay's intentions were crystal clear, Cleveland's response would reveal something far murkier. Because behind the scenes, not everyone in the Browns' building agreed on how to handle the storm. If Green Bay's intentions were bold, Cleveland's reaction was nothing short of chaotic. The organization, already known for decades of missteps, suddenly found itself in the middle of a storm that it had no plan to weather. Reports began surfacing that communication inside the Browns' front office had completely broken down. Some executives were adamant Shedeur was untouchable. Others, according to leaks, argued that entertaining Green Bay's proposal wasn't the worst idea, especially with draft picks and roster flexibility on the table. That internal split became painfully obvious when head coach Kevin Stefanski allegedly voiced his frustration at being left in the dark. Multiple insiders claim Stefanski only learned of the Packers' offer through outside chatter, not from the team's own brass. For a locker room that's already been walking on eggshells this season, the message couldn't have been worse. If the head coach isn't fully in the loop, then who's really running this franchise? Meanwhile, the players weren't blind to what was happening. Whispers of a potential Shedeur trade hit the locker room faster than any front office memo ever could. Veterans questioned whether the organization truly believed in its rookie savior, while younger players wondered if their careers would be tied to a team that still hadn't figured out its identity. Some reports even suggested that Shedeur himself felt blindsided, leaving him to question whether Cleveland saw him as the future, or just another bargaining chip. And then there was the fan base. Cleveland supporters, long accustomed to heartbreak, made it clear that they wouldn't tolerate losing another potential franchise quarterback. Protest calls lit up sports radio lines. Social media became a firestorm of hashtags demanding the Browns shut down any trade talk immediately. The energy around the team shifted from cautious optimism to outright hostility toward ownership, all within a single news cycle. What became obvious was that Cleveland wasn't just facing an external problem, they were unraveling internally. Instead of uniting behind their young quarterback, the organization seemed to be fracturing under the weight of indecision and poor communication. And if the chaos was already this bad over a single phone call, the question hanging in the air was terrifying. How would this team handle the storm still to come? While fans debated plays and coaches argued about depth charts, the real battlefield was financial. Shedeur Sanders isn't just an athlete, he's a business empire in cleats. Every snap he takes moves merchandise, drives viewership, and attracts sponsors eager to attach their brands to the Sanders name. The Browns weren't just holding a rookie quarterback, they were holding a walking revenue stream. In the weeks since his arrival, Sanders had already sold more jerseys than most Cleveland veterans combined. National sports outlets noticed that TV ratings spiked whenever he was even mentioned on broadcasts, let alone playing. Endorsement deals with major brands were reportedly waiting in the wings, contingent on him becoming the face of the franchise. In pure business terms, trading Shedeur would be like selling stock in a company right before it explodes in value. And that's exactly why the Packers' interest rattled Cleveland's ownership. From their perspective, Green Bay wasn't just trying to steal a quarterback, they were trying to hijack a brand. The Packers understood that Shedeur wasn't only a potential Pro Bowl talent, he was a marketing phenomenon who could bring a new generation of fans into their orbit. Cleveland, however, was stuck balancing dollars with doubt. Inside the front office, financial advisors reportedly reminded ownership of the stakes. Letting Shedeur go could mean losing millions in projected revenue, not to mention alienating the younger demographic he attracts. Sponsors weren't blind either. Several insiders suggested that major partners quietly pressured the Browns to shut down trade talks immediately. A rookie's trade value is one thing, but the ripple effect on advertising contracts and national exposure was another beast entirely. This is where the disconnect between football and business became glaring. Coaches wanted to focus on who could win games right now. Ownership, meanwhile, was staring at spreadsheets that showed Shedeur as a once-in-a-generation financial asset. Those conflicting priorities created tension that leaked into every level of the organization. At the end of the day, the Browns weren't just fighting over a player, they were fighting over the future value of their franchise. And while the business case for keeping Shedeur was undeniable, the fact that trade talk even surfaced showed just how unstable Cleveland's foundation really was. The Browns weren't just risking a quarterback controversy, they were risking their entire brand. As soon as whispers of Green Bay's push leaked, the media circus came charging in full force. Sports talk shows dedicated entire segments to debating whether Cleveland had already bungled another quarterback situation. National headlines painted Shedeur as both the victim of a dysfunctional franchise and the hottest commodity on the trade block. Every outlet had its spin. Some argued the Browns needed to cash in before disaster struck, while others slammed the organization for even considering moving their rookie star. The frenzy only amplified Shedeur's profile. Clips of him warming up on the sideline, sitting stone-faced on the bench, or even casually interacting with teammates went viral. Every gesture became fuel for speculation. Was he frustrated? Was he quietly planning his exit? Media personalities fed the fire by suggesting Shedeur might secretly welcome a move to a stable franchise like Green Bay. Suddenly, his silence spoke louder than any statement could. Inside the locker room, players began sending signals of their own. Several veterans posted cryptic messages on social media, short phrases like "loyalty matters" or "play the long game." Fans instantly dissected every word, trying to decode whether those posts were meant to support Shedeur or criticize management. Younger players, meanwhile, were spotted rallying around him more openly during practice, standing beside him in stretches, or hyping him up during drills even when he wasn't in the spotlight. Those gestures might seem small, but in the NFL, optics are everything. When a rookie quarterback starts receiving that kind of solidarity, it says less about his playing time and more about the locker room's belief in him as the future. And when the team's faith starts to outshine the coach's decisions, tension is inevitable. What the media frenzy did was magnify those signals 100 times over. Every supportive handshake, every frustrated glance, every vague social post was instantly turned into a headline. The Browns weren't just dealing with trade rumors anymore. They were trapped in a story bigger than themselves. A story where every move, on or off the field, was being watched, dissected, and spun into fuel for controversy. And while the media kept building the fire, one question loomed larger than all the rest. Would Cleveland's leadership finally step up and back their young star? Or would silence from the top only make the storm worse? By the time the trade rumors reached their peak, Cleveland's locker room was already a powder keg waiting to explode. The players had watched weeks of indecision from the front office, endured endless speculation from the media, and now they were faced with the unthinkable. Losing the one player many believed could finally change the franchise's fortunes. For a roster built on fragile chemistry, the Packers' phone call didn't just rattle the walls, it shook the foundation. Reports from insiders painted a vivid picture. Some veterans allegedly confronted staff members directly, demanding clarity on whether Shedeur was truly part of the long-term plan. Others were said to be openly questioning whether the front office even knew what it was doing. When the players start pressing management for answers, it's no longer just a business issue, it's a full-blown trust crisis. The younger players, meanwhile, rallied behind Shedeur in ways that went far beyond symbolic gestures. Teammates reportedly began treating him as the real quarterback of the future, regardless of what the depth chart said. During practices, they hyped him up louder than anyone else. In meetings, they leaned on his voice. Even off the field, Shedeur was becoming the gravitational center of the locker room. And when a rookie starts pulling that kind of influence away from the coaching staff, tension becomes unavoidable.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button.
What fueled the revolt wasn't just loyalty, it was frustration. Players had spent years living through Cleveland's endless quarterback carousel, and they weren't eager to ride that ride again. Trading Shedeur, or even letting the rumor hang in the air without shutting it down, felt like history repeating itself. The veterans who had stuck with the franchise through losing seasons weren't about to watch management sabotage yet another shot at stability. One insider described the mood bluntly. It wasn't anger, it was disbelief. Guys couldn't wrap their heads around the idea that the Browns might actually be that reckless. The sense of betrayal ran so deep that some players even considered taking their frustration public. Cryptic tweets, half-serious comments to reporters, and even quiet whispers about requesting trades themselves all began to circulate. The Browns' leadership, already scrambling, now had a full-scale rebellion on their hands. Coaches could preach focus and discipline all they wanted, but it's nearly impossible to hold a team together when the players feel their voices are being ignored. For the first time in years, the locker room wasn't divided by offense and defense. It was united, but against its own management. And that's the danger of a revolt like this. Once players stop believing in the people making the decisions, no playbook or game plan can patch it up. The Browns weren't just dealing with rumors anymore. They were staring down a mutiny, sparked by the very player they should have been protecting all along. If the early rumors had rattled Cleveland, the next wave nearly pushed them over the edge. Reports began surfacing that Green Bay wasn't backing down. In fact, they were doubling down. League insiders claimed the Packers had sweetened their offer, adding an additional first-round draft pick and dangling a proven starter in a position Cleveland desperately needed. Suddenly, what had started as speculation began to look dangerously real. The Browns' front office went into emergency mode. Meetings stretched late into the night, with ownership weighing the financial windfall against the long-term football implications. Some executives argued that the offer was too good to ignore, especially for a franchise with a history of squandering quarterback talent anyway. Others insisted that even considering it was madness, pointing out that trading Shedeur would not only gut the team's future, but also destroy what little trust remained in the locker room. Meanwhile, the leaks kept coming. Reporters began tweeting cryptic updates about momentum in the talks, sparking panic across Cleveland's fanbase. Sports talk radio was flooded with callers threatening boycotts if Sanders was dealt. National pundits speculated on potential landing spots for Shedeur if the deal fell through with Green Bay, fanning the flames even further. The noise was deafening, and the Browns had no way to silence it. Inside the locker room, the mood only grew darker. Players who had already rallied around Shedeur were now openly anxious. Some reportedly pulled him aside to reassure him, while others vented their frustrations to anyone who would listen. Every day the front office stayed silent, the revolt spread deeper. The players wanted answers, and management's refusal to give them only made things worse. For Green Bay, this was exactly the kind of pressure they wanted to apply. By escalating the talks publicly, they put Cleveland in a corner. Either commit to Sanders now or risk being seen as weak, indecisive, and incapable of holding on to their future star. The trade had not yet gone through, but one thing was clear. The longer these talks dragged on, the more damage they inflicted. And if Cleveland thought the chaos would die down on its own, they were about to learn the hard way that sometimes silence is the loudest mistake a franchise can make. By the time Cleveland hit the field for yet another nationally televised matchup, the franchise had already begun to feel like a parody of itself. The crowd didn't come for football anymore. They came to chant, boo, and demand change. From the opening drive, frustration boiled over. Joe Flacco stumbled through the offense yet again, tossing interceptions and missing wide-open receivers, while Shedeur Sanders stood on the sideline helmet in hand, exiled by the stubbornness of his head coach. The chants began in the first quarter. "We want Shedeur!" By halftime, they shook the stadium like thunder. Every failed possession fed the fire. By the third quarter, fans hurled objects onto the field, forcing stoppages in play. Television broadcasters could no longer mask the absurdity, openly criticizing Kevin Stefanski's refusal to put his young star under center. When Flacco went down briefly with an injury, the crowd erupted in anticipation of seeing Sanders, only for Stefanski to insert a third-string journeyman instead. The atmosphere instantly turned toxic. Players on the sideline couldn't hide their disbelief. Receivers shook their heads, linemen muttered under their breath, defensive veterans slammed helmets in disgust. Cameras captured Amari Cooper packing with visible frustration, while Nick Chubb consoled a furious teammate. It wasn't just a coaching controversy anymore. It was mutiny simmering in plain sight. By the fourth quarter, half the stadium had emptied. Those who remained rained down boos so loud that the offense could hardly communicate. Cleveland finished with barely 200 yards of total offense in an embarrassing loss, but the score didn't matter. What mattered was that the Browns had officially lost their own city. The post-game press conference sealed it. Asked whether he would consider playing Sanders after yet another lifeless performance, Stefanski repeated the same robotic line. "Joe gives us the best chance to win." Reporters gasped audibly. The delusion was complete. In that moment, it became undeniable. The coach had lost the team, the fans, and any grip on reality. Cleveland had reached rock bottom. Not just another bad loss, not just another wasted Sunday, but a moment so catastrophic it threatened the very identity of the franchise. And yet, in that darkness, one truth emerged crystal clear. Change was no longer optional. It was inevitable. The pressure had reached a breaking point. After weeks of leaks, escalating trade offers, and public outrage, Cleveland's ownership could no longer ignore the mounting evidence. The team was collapsing under its own indecision. Kevin Stefanski's authority had eroded completely. The locker room was fracturing, and fans had made it abundantly clear that patience had run out. The franchise teetered on the edge, caught between pride and pragmatism, with one irreversible choice looming: act or continue spiraling into irrelevance. The first signal of change came quietly, yet unmistakably. Andrew Barry, the Browns' general manager, convened a high-stakes meeting with ownership and key advisors. No media, no assistants, no distractions, just the people who controlled the future of the team. Sources suggest the conversation lasted hours, each argument weighed meticulously. Could the franchise survive the optics of trading Shedeur, or was retaining him worth risking Stefanski's departure? Every financial projection, every locker room report, every trade offer from Green Bay was on the table. Ultimately, the decision fell on one simple but powerful principle: maximize the long-term trajectory of the franchise. Stefanski, recognizing the untenable situation, offered his resignation privately. While he had intended to preserve dignity and maintain contractual obligations, ownership saw it differently. By accepting his departure, they signaled to players, fans, and the league that Cleveland prioritized talent, integrity, and competitive ambition over ego. With Stefanski out of the way, the path cleared for Shedeur Sanders. For the first time in weeks, he received the recognition and opportunity he had earned. Practices shifted immediately. The energy in the building transformed from anxious tension to cautious optimism. Receivers ran routes with renewed enthusiasm, linemen played with urgency, and coaches finally had the flexibility to implement packages built around the young quarterback's strengths. Every drill, every snap, and every huddle underscored a single truth: Cleveland was finally aligned behind its most valuable asset. Media coverage exploded. Analysts who had criticized the Browns now celebrated the organization for finally doing what should have been obvious. Fans returned to the stadium in droves, chanting Sanders' name, waving banners, and wearing jerseys. Social media buzzed with clips of him leading workouts, calling plays, and demonstrating the poise and leadership that had made him such a coveted prospect in the first place. The turning point wasn't just a personnel change, it was a cultural reset. Cleveland, long synonymous with dysfunction and indecision, finally took decisive action. Ownership, front office, and players moved in unison, sending a clear message. Merit, talent, and leadership now dictated the team's direction. For Shedeur Sanders, it was the moment when years of preparation, patience, and composure met opportunity. For the Browns, it was the first real step toward rewriting their story, proving that even in the deepest chaos, clarity and courage can still emerge. When Shedeur Sanders finally took the field as Cleveland's starting quarterback, the atmosphere was electric. Fans had been waiting weeks for this moment, and the anticipation felt almost tangible. The stadium erupted as he emerged from the tunnel, a clear symbol of hope after months of chaos. This wasn't just a rookie debut. It was the arrival of a player who had been proven right by teammates, media, and analysts alike. From the first snap, Sanders made it clear he belonged. Quick reads, pinpoint accuracy, and decisive scrambles immediately set him apart from the struggles of his predecessor. Receivers adjusted effortlessly to his timing, and the offensive line, energized by his presence, protected him with renewed focus. Every completion seemed to send a message. The Browns had finally unlocked the potential that had been sidelined by indecision and stubbornness. By halftime, the stats were impressive, but even more telling was the energy shift. Teammates cheered louder, celebrated harder, and moved with purpose. The sideline buzzed with a mixture of awe and relief. Sanders wasn't just playing well. He was galvanizing the entire team, showing leadership far beyond his rookie status. Media and fans alike took notice instantly. Highlights circulated within minutes, breaking across social media feeds. Analysts praised his poise, arm strength, and football IQ, noting how he had elevated a previously stagnant offense. For the first time in weeks, the narrative shifted from dysfunction and speculation to excitement and validation. Cleveland fans celebrated not just a win, but the arrival of their new cornerstone. By the final whistle, the Browns had dominated a playoff contender. Sanders had thrown multiple touchdowns, rushed for significant yardage, and completed an impressive percentage of his passes. The performance confirmed what insiders had been saying all along. Cleveland had found its franchise quarterback. The victory wasn't just a score on the board. It was a statement to the league, to the media, and to a fan base long starved for stability. In that single game, Shedeur Sanders didn't just rise, he transformed the franchise. The Browns, once mired in chaos, suddenly had direction. A culture of confidence replaced frustration, and optimism returned to Cleveland. For Sanders, it was the first step in a career poised to redefine the team's identity for years to come. Cleveland's saga with Shedeur Sanders reaches more than just the surface of wins and losses. It serves as a mirror reflecting the fragile intersection of talent, leadership, and organizational decision-making. The journey from speculation to chaos, revolt, and eventual breakthrough illustrates how a single player, if nurtured properly, can redefine a franchise, both on and off the field. For the Browns, this was more than a rookie quarterback emerging. It was a test of their identity, priorities, and ability to make hard choices when stakes are highest. Ownership faced impossible questions. Prioritize the coach's ego or the team's future. Protect perceived authority or embrace the talent that could truly alter the franchise's trajectory. Every misstep in those tense weeks magnified scrutiny from fans, media, and even league executives. Yet, in choosing to act decisively, Cleveland demonstrated that sometimes leadership requires courage, humility, and the willingness to admit previous mistakes. The crossroads wasn't simply about trades, contracts, or draft picks. It was about integrity, accountability, and the recognition that talent must guide opportunity. For Shedeur Sanders, the situation tested more than skill. It tested patience, composure, and professionalism. Weeks of uncertainty, public pressure, and political maneuvering could have derailed a less resilient player. Instead, Sanders maintained focus, cultivated relationships within the locker room, and prepared meticulously for the moment he was finally entrusted with responsibility. His rise underscores a universal truth in professional sports, and in life, talent alone isn't enough. Success demands preparation, poise, and the ability to navigate chaos without losing direction. Fans, too, played a critical role in this story. Their frustration, social media campaigns, and unwavering support created a visible, undeniable force that the organization could not ignore. They reminded the Browns that a franchise exists not only in offices and practice fields, but in the hearts of those who invest emotionally in its players and decisions. In mobilizing around Sanders, the fanbase became an active participant in shaping the team's direction, a rare, powerful reminder of the influence supporters wield. Ultimately, Cleveland stands at a renewed crossroads. The franchise has reclaimed momentum, its future brightened by a transcendent quarterback, yet history warns that success is never guaranteed. Decisions now must balance immediate opportunity with long-term growth, nurture talent without repeating past mismanagement, and build a culture resilient enough to withstand the inevitable pressures ahead. The saga of Shedeur Sanders is more than a single story. It is a lesson in leadership, patience, and vision. It challenges every franchise, every coach, and every executive to ask, when talent emerges, will you protect it, harness it, and allow it to define your destiny? Or will politics, pride, and indecision stand in the way? Cleveland's choice was made, but the lesson resonates far beyond one team, leaving the NFL and its fans watching, wondering, and perhaps rethinking what it truly takes to build greatness.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and lets us know you love this kind of content. And hey, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with your friends, your group chats, or anyone who loves football as much as you do. The more the conversation spreads, the better it gets. Most importantly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss when we drop fresh stories, wild rumors, or breaking updates that the mainstream media won't talk about.